This talk is about the human experience of your digital customers. Welcome. Welcome to my home. This is a bit of an unusual environment. It's not a hotel room or a convention center. It's also a lot more personal for me and for you than a talk I'd choose to give on stage. A little bit about me. I'm Ben McCormick. I lead customer experience management here at FullStory, where we look at customer experience across the entire customer journey. Previously, I've led customer support teams here at FullStory and at Trello. And I also was a support engineer at Fall Creek Software and had a brief stint as a software developer at a company called Honey Baked Ham. So let's dive into the talk. I'm here to talk about the human experience of our digital customers. So perhaps it's fitting that I'm in my home and not on stage in a hotel conference room. In fact, the idea for this talk came from one of our partners. We were sitting down at a FullStory event, and this partner is working with a prominent hotel chain, and they were trying to figure out the connection, the link between the physical and the digital. How are they connected? It's almost as if they're looking for a magic tool or project to link the physical and digital together. There is a link between physical experiences and digital experiences, but it's not magic. We already have the tools to make the connection, so let's take a look. So to make this connection, let me tell you the story of how we went about getting into this home. Last fall, I asked my wife what she thought about moving so I could get closer to work. And it's a bit ironic now because for me to get closer to work is to just show up at home. But that was the goal. And we wanted to move from the suburbs outside of the perimeter in Atlanta and get inside the perimeter, which would drastically cut down my commute time. And we found the perfect little home. It was smaller than what we had in the suburbs, but it had an open floor plan, an updated kitchen, nice built-in bookshelves in the office. And it was a place that we could make a home for our family. It was perfect. And like most folks do when they buy a home, we took out a mortgage. Pretty standard practice. And I read through the mortgage documents almost to the letter to understand what I was getting into. And it is pretty clear when you read through mortgage documents, you better pay your mortgage or else. And the or else there is that if you don't pay your mortgage, your home becomes the lender's home and you're going to have to move out. So we closed, and this is a picture of our family on Thanksgiving after we close. You can actually see if you look over my wife's shoulder, that's the office from which I'm giving this talk right now. So we settle in, and then in February, now keep in mind we closed in November, and in February I received this email. So we, as is pretty standard, we made our loan through an originator. That loan got packaged up, resold, and now it's being serviced by a different company. And my first introduction to this different company is this email. We have no record of your mortgage payment. Please pay right away. Now, I'm not terribly nervous at this point. I've made 2 payments by paper check to the loan originator using the documents that I got at closing, but I'm a little bit nervous that they don't have a record of my payment. So I think about how am I going to go about resolving this so I can get clarity. So my first step is to send them an email. I hit reply to the message, include a copy of the cleared check, hoping for a quick reply acknowledging receipt so that they can show that they're in their accounting they have a record of my payment. This is what I get instead. Apparently what I hit reply to, even though the sender email was different from the reply to email, I hit reply to a no reply email address. And so this channel just simply didn't exist. So then I try to log into my account online. Let me use their self-service channels to see what my account status is. And when I do that, I get an error that the account has already been registered with that tax ID, which is weird because this is the first time I've ever signed in to this particular account. And at this point, I'm starting to get a bit nervous. 2 of the channels that I've tried are completely broken. And so I'm getting a bit nervous, but I decide to go ahead and call. It's not my preferred contact channel, but what other options do I have if email and self-service aren't available? Now, This expression pretty much sums up my call. I would say I managed to avoid yelling, but this is definitely how I felt. When I got on the call, they had no record of my previous payments, although they tried to assure me that I wouldn't be penalized within the first 60 days. I was given a link to sign in online, but the link they sent didn't match the domain of their website, so I had trouble trusting if it was actually the right, if it was a site I should use. And then I did explain that I tried to sign in online and I got an error, and they had no concept of how this error could occur. Now it turned out the mortgage on on our previous home was serviced by another company that this company owned. So there was a parent company that serviced mortgages, but under different platforms. The agent I spoke to wasn't even aware that there was another portal that could potentially be serving me a mortgage under the same brand. And this totally blew my mind that the person I was speaking to wasn't aware that there was another company that could potentially be providing this service. So they promised me they would file an IT ticket. So I think I got off the phone. I didn't yell at the person, but I think I did use the expression, "How would you feel if you were in my situation?" a few times to try to generate a little bit of empathy. So then a day passes, and the next day we actually get a physical letter in the mail. Apparently, I expect this was the physical letter that was supposed to be in something we received before we got the email saying we hadn't sent our payment. And this is giving me instructions on how to sign in online. So I'm like, okay, let me follow these instructions to sign in online. But it still doesn't work. I get the same message as before. So now I'm going to give customer service a call again, try to see what the status of my IT ticket is, and the automated system literally hangs up on me. I'm not even kidding. I went through half a dozen prompts, the system rang twice, and then click, I'm off the call. And at this point, it's insanely frustrating because I can't email them. I can't log in via self-service, and when I try to call, it automatically hangs up on me. So when we ask, what's the connection between the physical and the digital? Did my mortgage company need a magical tool to know that my billing details were incorrect, the email channel was completely missing, the online portal was broken, and customer service was unhelpful? Did they need a tool for that? In the meantime, this is how I feel. I'm getting pretty scared. I have a bill that says I owe 2 full mortgage payments, even though I've paid. I can't log into my account online. I can't get through to a human via their phone system. Their agents aren't able to respond to my emails. What if this company, which appears incompetent at this point, doesn't believe I've paid? Will they try to foreclose on my home? Now, it seems like I'm having a lot of irrational thoughts, and I am, but for me, this isn't just an accounting mishap or a customer service issue. This is my home, and I go back to those documents that I signed, and I wonder what happens if this company can't get its act together, and they start following through on the things that they said they would when I signed those documents. I wonder how these events might have taken place in the office lobby of a financial institution. Imagine if I'm physically in a lobby in an office and I can't get through to an agent. How long would my frustration go unnoticed? If my account isn't set up correctly, would they tell me they were filing a ticket and ask me to come back next week to check on its status? What if other customers in the lobby could see what I was experiencing? Would they bring their business to this bank, to this financial institution? Would the company really let a customer go through that much pain in front of other customers? I'm guessing no. So when we ask, what is the connection between the physical and the digital? We have the information already, but are we paying attention? So for the rest of this talk, we're going to talk about how we can start paying attention. We'll explore 3 different ways we can pay attention to our digital customers. What does it mean to see our digital customers? They may not be physically present, but that doesn't mean we can't do a better job seeing them. Is our tool stack focused on the customer? Our tools play a greater role in shaping customer experience than we realize, so we should examine them. And lastly, what does it look like when we take the time and space to focus on customers? So first, seeing our digital customers. One of the ways we see digital customers is via the communication channels we have. We can refer to the actual text of emails and call logs, but we might also have charts and graphs which summarize this experience. You have reports, you have meetings with other teams, but this gives us an incomplete picture. It's only of what the customer actually said, not of what they did. And furthermore, what they say um, doesn't always give the complete picture, so we end up having to write back to them to get reproduction steps in hopes that we can get a better picture of what's going on. But asking for reproduction steps is more work for the customer, and that's not always a great experience either. But even if we get reproduction steps and we're able to connect with engineers, and engineers are able to access log files, who has access to those log files? Is it customer-facing teams, or is it just engineers? And even if the engineers have access, are they able to really see what the customer experienced? A lot of times these are difficult to parse. They don't show as clearly what the customer experienced as if they were right in front of you. You don't always see their pain. So we have to ask, is there a better way to see our digital customers? Because with the methods we just described, how many times do customers not get back to us with reproduction steps? Or do engineers not fix the bug because the reproduction steps didn't work? Or the log files didn't really matter because just one customer was affected? What if you could actually see the bugs that customers experienced clearly and without asking them, and have the precise number of how many times it occurred? What would happen to the communication between service and engineering teams if that were true? What would happen to the product? And what would be the impact to the customer? So let's look at a better way to see the digital experience of our customers. Take this email. Instead of asking the customer for reproduction steps, I have a handy link that I can click to watch their session. And when I see their session, I can actually see my digital customers and their experience. And when you can see your customers, that creates empathy. And empathy leads to the type of pro-user change that makes for better digital experiences and more loyal customers. How much do I wish my mortgage company was able to see my experience on their website, that they had the tools in place to truly see me as a customer, and they took the time and space to prioritize focusing on the customer. So now let's take a look at our tool stack. Do we have customer-focused tools? I love this quote, which was made popular by John Culkin. We shape our tools, and thereafter our tools shape us. We use so many different tools in our day-to-day workflow. How often do we pause and reflect about how our tools are shaping what we're doing? And when it comes to working with customers, how much are our tools shaping the experience that our customers have? Take, for example, a basic help desk queue. All support teams have them, and they're necessarily going to be focused on transactions. That's not such a bad thing because teams need transactional efficiency. You want your support teams to be able to move quickly through a queue. But if you're overly focused on transactional efficiency, you could lose sight of the customer. So what would it look like if our help desk was more focused on the customer? We could start by using a customer-focused tool, and it could look something like this. Now, this is a screenshot from Customer's website. That's customer with a K. And I think it does a good job of putting the focus on the customer right in line with the conversation, so you never lose focus. Yes, you can see the interaction with the customer. And if you're an agent, yes, you know you want to get this done, but you can see a more complete picture of what the customer looks like and what they've experienced right at your fingertips without leaving that conversation. Another thing we can think about is enhancing our existing tooling. Like take this example. FullStory's help desk doesn't have the sweet inline integrations you saw in the last screenshot, but what we do have is we've taken the steps to remove friction in getting a better view of the customer and our other internal tools. So we made a custom app in our existing help desk that takes us to the various tools that we have in one click so we can get a more complete picture of the customer. Removing friction in the employee experience really matters. The more steps your employees have to go through, the less likely they'll be focused on the customer. The last thing we want to look at is time and space. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about, especially when it comes to customer support and customer experience. We need to take the time and space to put ourselves in our customers' shoes. What does it feel like to be a customer? Now, a lot of times we already know this is true. We already know that we have to take the time and space to put ourselves in the customer's shoes if we want to provide a better customer experience. What we don't always talk about is how we get there. What are the actual things that we can do to get there? So I'm going to talk to you about a magical tool here that is going to help you put yourselves in your customer's shoes to create customer empathy. Your calendar. Just look at the calendar and the calendar of your team. Find the time outside of the queues and the inboxes to focus on the customer. And yes, I actually mean blocking off time on your calendar, creating events where you're going to do the things that take you out of your day-to-day and put your focus on the customer. You know, there's a trend over the past few years where we've been rebranding customer support teams as customer experience teams. It's not universal, but it's a trend. I don't have strong opinions that teams should always be named in a certain way, but I do care that what teams do roughly matches how they're named. And if your team is in the queue 100% of the time, or maybe 120% of the time, and if they're getting burned out, is it really fair to say they're focused on the customer experience? This is a question we asked at FullStory. We asked, what would happen if our support agents spent 40% of their time outside the queue? We didn't just want to block off our calendars as a one-time thing. We asked what would happen if support agents spent 40% of their time outside of the queue on a regular basis. And that's a big ask. 2 full calendar days per week is a pretty huge ask for most support teams. But we did it. And while the full justification for this thinking is beyond the scope of this talk, I want to talk through how we thought about it. And I have a couple blog posts on the FullStory blog that get into our thinking. And so back in 2017, I wrote a post about how you can get more output by working in the queue less. We talk about Parkinson's law, about how the work you have expands to fill the time that you give it. So sometimes just giving less time to the queue means you'll get it done faster, and that will free up time to focus on customers elsewhere. And that blog post led to a webinar which talks about breaking your addiction to the support queue and what happens when you make that transition. And lastly, last year, I shared about how these decisions to spend time outside of the queue completely changed how we think about hiring and customer support. So for us at FullStory, 40% of the time outside of the queue wasn't just an idea. We literally built our entire team around it. In order for this to be true, we needed to hire people who were really good and really effective in the customer support queue. We needed to hire people who could be effective outside of the queue. And we needed to design systems that attracted people who were considered the best in the industry. So this is what the FullStory customer support team looks like today. And being able to tell employees they'd have consistent time outside of the queue meant we'd be able to attract and retain really great talent in customer support. And one of the things I'm proud of is that 4 of the 7 members of the support team have managed teams at previous companies. They brought a wealth of experience to our support team here at FullStory. And when that happens, when you bring a talented support team on board and they spend 40% of their time outside of the queue, what happens? You get an increased focus on the customer and systems for product improvement. So what happens if your support agents spend 40% of their time outside of the queue? You have a lower support volume because you dedicate time to building the systems of communication with engineering that causes bugs to get fixed. And when you have a lower support volume, that means you can slow the pace of hiring. And when your team isn't burnt out and can focus on the customer, that leads to a higher customer satisfaction. So, what is the connection between the physical and the digital? It's not magic. Let's start paying attention to see our digital customers. Let's examine our tool stack to make sure we have customer-focused tools. And let's take the time and space outside of our day-to-day to make sure we're focusing on the customer. Thank you.